Hello, BookTube. All right, we're continuing with our library tour, and our library tour has wandered into the darkest depths of Mordor, and that is this little recessed hutch in this wall where books have just accumulated willy-nilly. And we're doing the top shelf, which is half buried in shadow. There shouldn't be any books up there, and if there are books up there, they should be large, easily visible hardcovers, all in a neat line, so you can pull them down. They shouldn't be mass markets up there where you can't even see the books that are at the top of the stacks, and they certainly shouldn't be double stacked up there. That is, it's the benefit of these library tours is that they're helping me to really think about the books I have in this room, and that's good, because the more I think about them, the fewer they'll be. But we're doing all the mass markets that I have, pretty much all of them have migrated up here, so that's what we're going to continue to do in this next... I don't have any idea how long this part of the library tour is going to take, but you don't seem to mind, so I'm going to just plow ahead. Okay, the first book is by Mildred Savage. This is Parish, with a great old 1970s book cover. And this is a Romeo and Juliet style story about warring tobacco farming families that I read... I read because she was brought to my attention as a possible interview subject back when she was still alive, and I thought, oh well, I'll read her precious, ointment and doily fiction so that I know what to talk about her with. I read Parish and was blown away. This is a great novel, a legitimately great novel. Unfortunately, I never interviewed her before she died, or I would have told her that. I don't know how many people in her life did. It was made into a movie, but I don't know that Mildred Savage is ever going to be rediscovered, and I've read a lot of her other books, and a lot of them don't deserve it. But lightning struck with this one. She wrote a great American novel. So we're off to a fine start here. Okay, this next one is an English Library Penguin paperback. The Penguin Classic English Library for a while had orange spines, and this is Moll Flanders. I love this edition. I love this cover. I just love the whole look about it. The editor, the introduction, I love it all, so I kept that one. Okay, all right. This is Rob Thurman's urban vampire book, Nightlife. This is the Cal Leandros and his super sexy kinsman. And this is, Nightlife is the first one, I believe. Yeah, I think this is the first one. And they're cheesy. They're very action-oriented, and they're slang written, with kind of a slang. They're not high vampire literature, but they are really, really good. Really enjoyable candy. And I think I have them all. I don't see any more of them in this stack, but it's the whole problem with these stacks is that you can hide whole libraries of things. Okay. All right, this next one is a Star Trek novel. It's a novelization of a TV series of Deep Space Nine. This is a novelization by Diane Carey of The Way of the Warrior, in which the peace treaty between the Federation and the Klingons briefly breaks apart. And I have this mainly because most Deep Space Nine novels I did not like. I have this mainly because Diane Carey is a fantastic writer, a fantastic Star Trek writer. In my opinion, the best one. And so I tried to get every Star Trek novel that she wrote, because even the really bad ones are still going to be, the stuff that's working from bad material is still going to be really good. And the TV show Way of the Warrior on Deep Space Nine had the great wish fulfillment moment, the fan favorite wish fulfillment moment, where the Klingons are attacking the space station, and our Starfleet crew is badly outnumbered, badly outgunned, and at one point the Klingons knock out the shields and transport soldiers onto the command center of Deep Space Nine. And the Klingons have, disruptors, but they mainly want to fight hand to hand. And it eventually comes to that, and that is the dream fulfillment sequence of every Star Trek show. Again, leaving out Star Trek Discovery, just ignoring its existence completely. Every Star Trek TV show, every franchise show, the question, fans always have the essential question, well, what would happen if our core crew of heroes had to fight Klingons in hand-to-hand combat? What would happen? Handicap each person as you go along the cruise. I'm afraid that is one of the little pastimes of Star Trek fans. They go from the original show, from Star Trek, the original series, and just figure if you took the great 7 characters from that show and pitted them against Klingon warriors, what would happen? You know, Kirk can handle himself. Maybe Scotty can handle himself. Spock can certainly defeat a Klingon in combat. But Sulu, maybe. Chekhov, no. Uhura, no. You start to wonder about that. And then you go to Star Trek, the boring generation, and you have Captain Baldy, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, who in hand-to-hand combat always tries to hug his enemies. And of course, Deanna Troi would be worthless. You picture that Riker could probably handle a Klingon in hand-to-hand combat, and of course, Data could handle 100 of them. He's a super strong android who effectively cannot be hurt. And you go right on down the line, and Deep Space Nine is the next one, but of course fans wondered about Star Trek Voyager. Janeway's proficient, but the writers of Star Trek Voyager never do the fans the insult of having her be a superwoman. If she's facing in physical combat a larger male being, she's going to lose unless she uses her wits. She has wits in ample abundance, so she doesn't often lose. But her crew, I mean, you've got young Ensign Harry Kim, who's probably going to lose to a Klingon. You've got Tom Paris, who without a weapon would probably lose to a Klingon. You have Chakotay, her number one, who would certainly be able to defeat a Klingon in combat. You have the Doctor, who in later seasons of the show has a mobile hologram emitter that allows him to walk around as a solid light projection. So not only can he not be hurt, but he can inflict any amount of damage. You have Seven of Nine, who has Borg implants and is super strong. And you have Tuvok, Commander Tuvok, who is a 120-year-old Vulcan weapons specialist who can probably be relied upon to handle his weight in Klingons. And so on down the line. And we do it. We have that. We don't get it anywhere else. In Star Trek on film, we only get that in Deep Space Nine, in Way of the Warrior. And it's glorious. I'm sure you can find that moment on YouTube now that I think about it. But you have Sisko, who can defeat Klingons. You have Major Kira, who grew up in the Resistance, literally fighting for her whole life and can handle herself. You have Jadzia Dax, who's a tall, statuesque, beautiful woman, but actually she is a Trill who has lived hundreds of years, including many of them with Klingons. And in that great, great moment, she's handling Klingons easily. And you also have, you have Odo, who is a shapeshifter. He's not on the bridge when the attack happens, but he fights Klingons on his own, and he is effectively unbeatable. He can't be hurt, and he can assume any form or density that he wants. And you also have Worf. The only great thing about Star Trek The Next Generation is its creation of the Klingon culture, just like the original Star Trek created the Vulcan culture. And one of the greatest creations, fictional creations of Star Trek The Next Generation is Lieutenant Worf. And it's wonderful to see. It's a wonderful moment, a pure fan service moment. Sorry about the doorbell. Apparently every time I make a video, I'm going to get books in the mail. And also, if it's any consolation to you, anytime I'm not making a video, I'm also going to get books in the mail. You should have seen them yesterday. I'm supposed to get 3 major deliveries during the day. UPS, FedEx, and the U.S. Postal Service truck. Not the guy with the bag, but the truck that drives by with large amounts of packages. I don't count on the guy with the bag for packages. He brings bills and magazines and whatnot. But I count on those other 3, which means 3 visits from free books in the mail. And yesterday, every time I went out to feed the sparrows, it had to happen probably half a dozen times, there were new packages out there. And it just occurred to me that probably the rest of you aren't going to have much patience with me complaining about that particular thing, are you? All right, sorry. Let's just move on, shall we? This next one is also a Diane Carey novel. This is The Dominion War, another Deep Space Nine novel. This is a series of books in which Diane Carey decides to piece together a lot of the episodes in the Dominion War series of Deep Space Nine and write them as novels. She doesn't go as far as she could. She was not given permission to do much in the way of raw invention. Otherwise, boy oh boy, you could write a gigantic 600-page Star Trek epic about the Dominion War, because it also was the ultimate in fan service, where what would happen if the 3 major giant space empires, for want of a better word for the Federation, the Romulans, the Klingons, and the Federation, were suddenly faced with an enemy who wanted all of them dead and had to team up. That is the ultimate conclusion of the Dominion War story, and it's fantastic. Just fantastic. And there are so many stories that aren't told. It'd be nice if Paramount gave permission to the books division, the despised and largely vestigial books division, to write that. give somebody the brief to write that. What a great space opera that would be. But anyway, it's just another Diane Carey Star Trek novel. Okay, then we have Dean Wesley Smith. This is Star Trek Strange New Worlds. This is volume 1 of an anthology series of fan stories, where fans and some minor professionals would write stories based in various Star Trek canons. Actually, I don't think any professionals wrote for this. I think this was the old style way where it was fans who did it, and they got prizes, including some professional notice. And I loved seeing this, mainly because I'm an old style Star Trek fan, and there was a series that did exactly this 30 years before this, called Strange New Voyages. New Voyages, Star Trek New Voyages. That only went for 2 volumes. It had 2 wonderful, wonderful people as editors, and the story certainly didn't dry up, but the studio started thinking, well, we don't want to encourage this sort of thing when we've now got an active movie franchise, so we're going to shut this down. This navigated those proprietary hurdles for a lot longer. The Strange New World series went on for a long time, I think for 10 volumes. I wish I still had them all. I have number 1, and of course, as with any series like this, it's drastically uneven. You'll get 1 really good story in a whole volume, maybe 2. But fascinating to see what fans do with them and where the fan concentration lies in them. Okay, we've hit a vein of Star Trek, clearly. This is Star Trek the Motion Picture by Gene Roddenberry, the only Star Trek novel Gene Roddenberry ever wrote himself. This is the novelization of the first movie, but it goes a lot further than the first movie, especially at the beginning. The first 100 pages deal with a lot of the stuff that was going to be in the movie and was cut. The movie was that you end up seeing in the movie theater or on video or VHS or whatever is the result. It's the maimed result of many turf wars. It was certainly not the result of one vision, and this book sort of kind of was. This was the creator of Star Trek writing a Star Trek novel that brings his crew back together, and that's a great premise. It was done 3 times in the Star Trek movie canon. And this is a lot, especially the first 100 pages, before it starts cleaving very closely to the movie. This is just fascinating. Not the best prose in the world, but that's okay. Okay, this is an older Star Trek novel. This is Robert Vardman's The Klingon Gambit. Just a thin thing from... It's numbered as number 3. Once the movies took off and started making money, then all of a sudden you had, corporate suits taking over the line of novels that before then had been happening sort of willy-nilly and crossing all sorts of boundaries that the movie people would say, oh no, you can't have that happen. Oh no, you can't have that happen either. Oh no, you can't have that happen. No, you can't have this. This plot has to change because we've got somebody who pitched us a treatment and we kind of like it, so this might be a movie someday. So that has to change. That wasn't true for the first 20 years of Star Trek fiction. And this is right where it was starting to change. When you start to see the books with numbers on them, that's when it's starting to change. And you're starting to get corporate interference. So that much later, 15 years after the Klingon Gambit, I knew a couple of people who got briefs to write Star Trek novels from, the publisher. And they said, okay, I worked on it for a few weeks. I wrote a Star Trek novel, did a lot of research, and turned it in. And when I got my proofs back, I didn't even recognize the first 50 pages. There wasn't a single word in the first 50 pages that had been written by me. It was all corporate and legalistic arse covering. But okay, this next one is not a Star Trek novel. not actually. I mean, it is most science fiction space opera nowadays is Star Trek, but at least not explicitly. This is Brother John by Rutledge Etheridge. It's just a space novel, a boy coming of age, an adventure novel. I liked it quite a bit. I don't know why I kept it. I didn't like it enough to keep it, but here it is. Okay, all right. This next one is another Diane Carey Star Trek novel. This is Wagon Train to the Stars, the first book in a New Earth series where the Enterprise is tapped to lead a colonial expedition to form a colony on an incredibly far distant world. And the Enterprise is chosen long after its return from its voyage, when all of its command crew is legendary. And the command crew, largely at Starfleet's insistence and at the request of Captain Kirk, comes together for this mission just for the prestige of it. The Federation really wants good PR with this whole colonizing effort, and there's no better instrument of good PR than the USS Enterprise with Captain Kirk and his crew. So our much older and much more seasoned crew start out on this journey, leading these colonists to a new world. And I don't have any of the other volumes. I think I just have this one. And boy, is it terrific. Only Diane Carey could do this. She knows the original series backwards and forwards, but this is one of the few truly great novels about a crew that is not young, but a crew that has seen it all, done it all, and it's wonderfully done. There's one fantastic moment. I mean, the book's full of fantastic moments. There's one fantastic moment where Kirk is arguing with the prima donna governor of this new colony on the bridge of his ship when an emergency is happening amidst the fleet. And our crew is so experienced that with side glances and gestures and body language, they can communicate about the emergency and fix it without the governor ever being the wiser as to what's going on. Just a toss-off scene. Okay, more Star Trek. This is Strange New Worlds 2. So, all right, so I have 2 of these things. I think after 2 or 3, they started coming out in trade paperback size. They stopped being mass markets. So that might have been when I dropped off. Okay. All right, this is a Signet mass market of Frankenstein, done in the style of, there was a YA novel that looked like this, sort of like this, and was a YA takeoff of the story of Frankenstein. And the publisher decided to come out with a version of Frankenstein that looked the same, and they sent me one. I don't need a mass market paperback of Frankenstein. Okay, all right, this is a bit of a departure. This is not science fiction. This is The Great World. This is a mass market paperback of excerpts from the Greville Diaries, which is a fantastic document. It's a fantastic reading experience. I don't think that it has a Penguin Classic or a modern edition of any kind, even though Charles Greville was an eyewitness to a lot of Georgian history. And it's also fantastic to read. It's one of those books that really deserves a much wider readership than it has, and this is a throwback. God, I don't know when this mass market paperback was made. 1964. This was made in 1964. In 1964, you could make a mass market paperback like this and send it to drugstores and bookstores on train platforms and spinner racks, and you could expect that some people would buy it. Reading public today, I don't think. No one would ever make a mass market of the Greville Diaries today. Oh, okay, all right. This is what I was talking about. This is Star Trek The New Voyages. This is number 2, edited by Sandra Marshak and Myrna Culbreth, with the active participation of almost the whole of the original cast, and a great cover painting. And this is a collection of short stories, fan short stories, some professional writers, that sort of thing. Plus, our editors write a story for this volume called The Procrustean Petard, in which the genders of most of the command crew are swapped. And I don't think you could get that story past an editor today. I don't think it would work. It's tremendously well done. And so are a lot of the other stories in here, and all of the connecting stories are really good too. I must have The New Voyages 1 here somewhere. The New Voyages wasn't called 1. It was just called The New Voyages because Sandra Marshak and Myrna Culbreth had no idea that it would catch on. They certainly had no idea the amount of stories they would get in the mail. So this was the original fans and professionals writing Star Trek. Actually, it wasn't. The original fans and professionals writing Star Trek was the dot matrix zines that were handed around at what we used to call conventions before, when it was just 30 people in a hotel room. But then there was this, and then decades later there was Strange New Worlds. Okay, all right, now we changed gears completely. This is Oxford Anthony Trollope. This is Framley Parsonage. And this last book is The American Senator. And the reason that I have these is because I realized belatedly, I had all of them at one point, these Oxford mass markets that were done for the centenary of Trollope. I had them all at one point or another. I read them all and loved them. And then I started getting rid of them when I started getting trade paperbacks. And then I realized, no, this is a legitimate case where you want to keep these original mass markets because the editing is very different. From new editors and new notes were commissioned for the newer trade paperbacks. And in a lot of cases, they aren't as good. in these Trollope volumes. Or are so different that it's not a redundancy at all. You need both. So I started looking for these actual mass market paperbacks that I'm looking for. But that's it. That is the next shelf of The Darkest Depths of Mordor. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. I'm glad that the shelf is not cracked and nothing has fallen on me, but we'll reconvene tomorrow. Thank you, BookTube.